on the WHAP channel, we will be discussing the French Revolution. The French Revolution began in 1787 due to economic problems within the French society. The French Revolution also became an inspiration to other revolutionary movements around the world. It was centered around Enlightenment ideas, which helped set up the government after it was done. It also resulted in the rise of Napoleon.
The Enlightenment ideas of political freedom and social equality appealed not only to the French, but also to the Americans and the Haitians. These principles caused revolutionary movements against monarchies. In France, a peasant rebellion overthrew the monarchy and established a republic. Haiti followed the French example and established independence with the slave rebellion. The American Revolution was the most successful in creating a lasting democracy and was seen as something to copy by the French and other colonies looking for independence. The Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen was very similar to the ideas conveyed in the Declaration of Independence.
Although the Enlightenment greatly affected the French Revolution, many other events played a part.
Before the French Revolution even began, many events led to the start of the revolution.
Some of the major causes of the French Revolution were the economic difficulties, political freedoms, and the fall of the ancient regime and Enlightenment ideas. The people were highly taxed to support the wealthy monarchies. Aristocrats were also confronted by the new Enlightenment ideas. The people wanted more equality and freedom of individuals.
France in 1785 faced a lot of economic difficulties, mostly concerning taxation. However, it was one of the most rich and powerful nations in Europe. The French people enjoyed lots of political freedom and a lower arbitrary punishment than most of their fellow Europeans. However, Louis XVI and the French nobility became more unpopular due to their gluttonous lifestyles. The fall of the ancient regime in France may be blamed in part on its own rigidity. Aristocrats were confronted by the rising ambitions of merchants, tradesmen, and prosperous farmers, who were allied with aggrieved peasants, wage earners, and intellectuals influenced by the ideas of Enlightenment philosophers. As the revolution proceeded, power devolved from the monarchy and privilege by birth and to more representative political bodies like legislative assemblies, but conflicts among the formerly allied republican groups became a source of considerable discord and bloodshed. All of the following proves that the French Revolution was not due to a single event, but to a series of events that together irreversibly changed the organization of political power, nature of society, and exercise of individual freedoms.
Now that we know the causes of the French Revolution, we can break it down into 4 stages. 1, the meeting of the Estates General. 2, the storming of the Bastille. 3, the reign of terror and the reign of Robespierre. And 4, the consulate of Napoleon.
The start of the revolution was influenced by the high people in the government, especially King Louis.
The high leaders like King Louis all met together and tried to make reasonable laws. The thing is, all these laws greatly upset the population of France. Some of the flaws were the tax reforms and the social reforms. King Louis was killed at the public guillotine later.
One of the major consequences of the government flaws was the storming of the Bastille. Many peasants met together to take over the prison.
The peasants met and decided to take over Bastille. Even though it was successful, it didn't help the revolution. At Bastille, there were only a few guards and weapons. The storming of Bastille became a major symbol of the revolution and inspired many to take arms.
After the storming of the Bastille, the revolution had officially begun. During the time of the revolution, Maximilien Robespierre took power in France.
The Reign of Terror was the period of violence that occurred after the onset of the French Revolution. During the time, many mass executions took place. The executions included many leaders and those who were against the revolution. The death toll ranged from 16,594 by guillotine and 25,000 across France. At the time Robespierre took power, he tried to bring reforms like King Louis, but it failed. He was also executed by the guillotine.
Open the door!
Now, the most significant stage of the revolution was the rise of Napoleon. With Napoleon's rise to power came the Napoleonic Wars.
Between 1799 through 1804, Napoleon took power and created an authoritarian government. He began with a period of expansion. He took over almost all of Europe, but he made the mistake of invading Russia during the winter. Almost all his troops died. The Congress of Vienna was established due to his failure. Napoleon lost his power and the Congress began to create a better reform and tried to cover up all of the revolution.
The French Revolution also gave an artillery commander by the name of Napoleon Bonaparte an opportunity to seize power. Born on August 15, 1769, he attended a military school at a young age and quickly rose through the ranks. He became notable early on for his influence on politics. One example of this was a disposal of a group of rioters to keep the revolutionary government intact in 1795.
As we mentioned, Napoleon took power in France during the fourth stage of the revolution. One of his first significant actions was taking power from the Directory.
Now, when Napoleon got back, the government that the French had already set up, the Directory, was a complete mess. Napoleon saw this as an opportunity for grabbing some power for himself. So what he did in 1799 was he overthrew the Directory and set up a consulate and named himself the Emperor.
One of Napoleon's interesting systems was known as the Continental System.
In 1806, Napoleon issued a new system called the Continental System. It was initially thought of as a way to deal with the British enemy. In theory, this would have worked, but several factors were unworkable and led to the Peninsular War.
Throughout his reign, Napoleon's military campaign stretched into many different places. These places included northern, southern, eastern, and western areas of Europe.
Napoleon was stationed as the French commander in Italy and quickly moved to conquer Austria, which he did in 1797. Wanting to become like Alexander the Great, he set out for Egypt shortly after, winning battles in 1798. He led a short campaign in Syria, was met with rough English resistance and Turkish resistance, and headed back to France.
So the Peninsular War began in response to the continental system that Napoleon set up. He spent most of 1807 and 1811 occupying and fighting countries in the Iberian Peninsula. However, in 1812, Napoleon drained much of his best soldiers from the Iberian campaign to invade Russia. This proved disastrous for Napoleon because his attempt to invade Russia was thwarted by the harsh Russian winters. His army dragged on, dropping like flies due to fatigue, hunger, and desertion. The slogans of the French Revolution were liberty, equality, and fraternity. This appealed to the French colony of Haiti. A man by the name of Toussaint L'Ouverture led a slave rebellion that ultimately led to independence of Haiti in 1804.
The French Revolution weakened the French government, which made plantation owners very rich. They had a huge influence on Haiti. The elite plantation owners wanted to take over Haiti for cash crop. Even though France was unstable, this meant that slaves would work harder for less wages. On February 4th, 1794, Maximilien Robespierre led the French Convention, which voted to abolish slavery in Haiti and everywhere else that France owned.
The Haitian Revolution ended in 1804 with a treaty that ended the revolution and declared Haiti an independent nation.
After a string of defeats, the Allies against the French met at Versailles in 1815 to reach a peace settlement.
During the reign of Napoleon, the ambassadors from all the other nations met together in Vienna. Their goal was to settle as many of the issues that arose during the French Revolution. The result was the loss of French territory as an end of 25 years of war. The treaty was signed 9 days before Napoleon's final defeat at Waterloo.
In conclusion, the French Revolution had many events that led up to it. Before we go, we want to mention the tennis court oath. That was a pivotal event during the first days of the French Revolution. The oath was a pledge in 576 and 577 by members of the Third Estate who were locked out of a meeting of the Estates General on June 20th, 1789. They made a makeshift conference room inside a tennis court located in St. Louis district of the city of Versailles. The oath was both a revolutionary act and an assertion of political authority that derived from the people and their representatives rather than from the monarch himself.
Thank you for tuning in to our program. We hope that you learned from our presentation. Thank you again, and good night.